All right.
Welcome to Security Guy Radio at Black Hat 2016. What's your name, sir?
Hi, I'm Jeff Williams.
And what's the name of your company?
Contrast Security.
Contrast Security. ContrastSecurity.com?
ContrastSecurity.com.
All right, excellent. And what does your company do?
So we do application security work. Actually, the reason we call it contrast, you know when you get an X-ray or MRI and they inject you with contrast?
I do know that, yes.
It makes all the security, it makes all the structures inside your body light up.
Right.
That's how contrast works. We work from inside software applications to do security from within.
Really, that's interesting because we're familiar with the traditional way of scanning a developer's code, then doing the reiterations and revisioning of the development on that. So how is your product different from that?
Well, scanning is really blind in a lot of ways. You scan from outside the application. Even if you're looking at the source code, you don't really understand how the application is fit together and how it all works when it's running. So Contrast uses a technique called software instrumentation to get inside the application, and it watches the app as it runs. It sees all the security relevant activity that occurs, and it can very easily identify vulnerabilities. And maybe the coolest thing is it can also identify attacks and block them.
Oh, wow.
For one product to do both of those things.
That's unique.
Innately within the application. This is not outside of the application extracting it. It's all real time.
So our agent becomes part of the application, and it does, so it's self-assessing and self-protecting application, and it's powered by our Contrast engine.
Now, Security Guy Radio's mom didn't raise any dumb kids, but I'm not a genius about this stuff. When you say it's inside the application, don't you have to have permission from Chrome to get in there and run inside their code? Is it an API or what is it?
So we run on the server side of the applications typically, right?
Okay.
So we're on the big application servers, web services, those kinds of things. You add our agent to your application environment, and you have to have permission to install that agent there. That's your advantage, actually. You own the app. You can install cameras wherever you want. That's okay. The bad guys don't have that advantage. So this is allowing you to leverage your advantage over the attackers.
Enterprise stuff. This isn't me on my desktop.
No.
Okay.
This is enterprise web applications, online banking, healthcare, that kind of
Now,
thing.
if I had a VPN and I worked at home and I'm logging into my company, am I protected that way too?
Well, yeah. I mean, if you're logging into your company over a VPN, you're probably using web applications inside that enterprise. And frankly, that cyber perimeter that you've established is probably not as strong as you really think.
Okay.
That means those internal applications that you're accessing over the VPN, they need to be protected.
Right.
They're a huge risk. If those internal applications get compromised, it's really bad. That's where all your sensitive intellectual property is, all your internal records. So that's a great place to deploy Contrast, as well as the external facing apps, of course.
So this agent is agnostic by nature, meaning it can integrate with any type of application, back-end coding. How does it work?
So there's actually a different agent for each of the platforms that we support. So we support Java, .NET, Node.js, and Cold Fusion.
Okay.
And all the different frameworks and libraries and so on that go along with those environments, we support those as well.
Excellent. Interesting.
This is innovation. This is something nobody else does.
This is quite different. There are a couple other competitors. Some of them do instrumentation on the vulnerability side. Some of them do instrumentation on the attack protection side, but we're the only unified agent that protects the whole software lifecycle. So from the second you start writing code, Contrast is there watching, it identifies vulnerabilities so you can fix them in stride.
Oh.
And then as you go through the process, as you get closer to deployment, you turn on attack protection, you deploy with that in place, and now you get visibility into who's attacking, what kind of attacks are they doing, and of course, you block them.
So what has been the response from the developer community? Because oftentimes we still see that lag in adoption because companies choose, they want to get their product out to market quicker, they don't want to be bogged down with revisions and edits. So how have y'all integrated with that?
So scanning is really tough for development projects because you can't scan every day. It's way too expensive. And so most people push it to the end of the process and then it's too late. So with Contrast, it's continuous. So we do really well with agile projects and DevOps projects. We're integrated into Maven, Jenkins, Eclipse, Jira, Gradle, Slack and HipChat. We use all the tools that the developer uses in their environment. So we're empowering them to write secure code the first time. So here's how it works. They're coding along. Maybe they accidentally introduce a SQL injection or cross-site scripting flaw. Then they run that code and test it locally with Contrast enabled. Contrast will instantly alert them, hey, you just coded a vulnerability.
So does it allow them, or does it give them the code to rewrite safely? Because maybe the developer doesn't know how to get rid of that SQL injection, that memory leak, etc.
Yeah, so it gives them the full remediation advice. In fact, I consider this a kind of micro training, right? A lot of developers get secure coding training, but I've taught a lot of those classes. Yeah. But I'm not sure it sticks that well. It's really hard.
A lot of people have told us that. They said, listen, it's not something the university has as Security 101 for coding. It's something you learn later. It slows down their business and their deployment, so they don't really prioritize it.
That's right.
And it's got to be number one. It's just got to be.
So this way, they get the advice as they're coding on the code that they're currently working on. So they fix it in stride, just the way that they would fix an index out of bounds exception or any other kind of coding error. They can fix security vulnerabilities there. And before they even commit the code, it's secure.
Wow.
So they can code with confidence.
So that's almost like real time.
It is absolutely real time.
And there can't be any argument from them because they don't want to come back and scan it and say, wait a minute, I got to fix it 6 months later. It's done on the fly.
Well, one of the hard things about scanning tools is if they generate false positives, then it irritates the developers. So because Contrast is inside the running app, it has a huge information advantage. So it's much more accurate than traditional tools, which means we have no problem giving our results directly to developers, and they love it.
Wow.
Now, do you save all this up in a big library so you learn, or it's not machine learning per se, but are you learning what common mistakes are in a lot of programming that becomes an educational process later?
Absolutely. So, the knowledge that's built into Contrast came from over a decade of consulting with large enterprises, working on real applications in real environments. And then as new things come out, like there's new things coming out at this conference, Black Hat, and Contrast, we'll look at those, we'll turn those into, we kind of take that research and turn it into patterns of code execution that we can recognize, so behavioral patterns. And then we add that in our tool, and then from that point forward, we enforce it. So, in a way, we're trying to do things at portfolio scale rather than traditional approach. You scan, scan, and scan in a linear kind of serial fashion. We're doing everything in parallel across thousands of applications.
What kind of customers do you have? Not by name, but the types of customers.
Sure. Well, a lot of them are large financials. We probably have 20 customers in the Fortune 500.
So big enterprises.
Yeah.
Big enterprises for sure, retail, healthcare, DoD. But we also have a lot of mid-sized clients that, they weren't able to use the previous generations of technology. But with Contrast, they can do it themselves with the people that they have because we have much less reliance on experts.
Now, Google, I love Google. Don't get mad at me because you put me at the top of the index. But do people like Google use these sort of things, or do they do their own thing? Do the giants go to third parties, or they just develop their own stuff? I'm always curious about that.
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and I think there's a range. Some organizations think they can do everything, and that's fine. Google's got a bunch of really smart people, and so that's great. We've invented a new approach to this problem, and I hope Google tries it. I think they'll like it, but
we're finding a lot of sharing discussion here. We had some sort of attack, and one of the people we interviewed worked with two other vendors that were here to supply the analytical data for the DNC email breach, right?
Yeah.
And you don't see that on the physical security side. Because I come from that environment, and I'm not going to share my camera product with your camera product. It's just, or your lock with my lock, right? But I am encouraged that people like yourself have this information, the ability to fix things, and eventually that bubbles up in education or trickles down to some end user. I think it's fabulous.
Excellent.
This is an interview I feel better about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Every interview I go from good to bad.
Okay,
now
good.
I'm optimistic that we're all going to be okay.
Well, we think information sharing is really, really important.
Yeah.
And because we're inside the app, we've got this wealth of information about what real applications are really doing.
Yeah, it's just not speculation. Yeah.
Yeah, so now we can share data about, how people are really being attacked, not the noise level attacks. Like most of the threat sources for AppSec are attacks that would never work. They're PHP attacks on Java applications. So it's all noise. They get counted so people can report billions of attacks.
Oh, I see.
But most of that is nonsense.
That's
so we
new.
actually report what's real. the attacks that are targeting real vulnerabilities. Those are the ones you care about. That's what we report, and we've got a great threat stream coming out of the product.
Any new things on the drawing table you want to tell us about? We're always looking for exclusives here.
Well, we recently released our RASP product. That's the runtime application self-protection side of things. So we use this instrumentation-based approach to identify and block attacks on applications. And it's relatively new, but it
So does that mean I can get rid of my application firewall?
That is exactly right. Initially you could run both, but eventually the goal is to replace those things. So.
Security Guy Radio's brain turned off for a second there. Are you talking about you're protecting your application as you code it in testing mode? Is that what you're talking about?
So you typically have different types of technologies. You have your typical firewall that you've always heard of, but then you have a specific technology that specifically blocks application type threats at the packet level.
So it's trying to enforce application security policy, but it's really a network device, and it doesn't know what it's protecting.
Exactly.
RASP runs within the application, so it really understands what it's protecting, which means it can be far more accurate, way less configuration, and so on. That was perfect.
Jeff's another enthusiastic. He loves this stuff.
I do.
You can tell.
I've been doing it for 20 years.
Yeah,
I love
absolutely. Jeff, give us your website again.
It's www.contrastsecurity.com.
Contrast Security, like an IVP with contrast.
Exactly.
Jeff, thanks for coming on the show. We appreciate
it. Thanks.
You're welcome to come on and do a 60-minute show anytime you want.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, this is interesting stuff. Very
Thanks a lot. We appreciate it.
Thanks for coming on Security Guy Radio.
All right. Appreciate it.